Most of us have some sort of discernible political preference or ideology, but is it influenced by where we live? A new study from Northwestern suggests it is, along with what kind of personality traits we have, aka are we sociable, are we agreeable? And here to discuss this study is Professor William Revelle, psychology professor and faculty director of the Personality, Motivation, and Cognition Laboratory. Professor Revelle, thanks for speaking with us. This was a massive study. You surveyed 150,000 individuals across 8,700 zip codes. Tell us what you found.
Okay. First of all, we've been doing this study. We've been collecting data for a long time on zip codes and people across zip codes across the United States and across the world. What we found in this study, the main work was done by my student, Kayla Gardner. What we found was the correlation between personality and your conservative attitudes depends upon the average conservatism of the zip code. And in some sense, this is obvious. It's the grandmother effect. Your grandmother will always tell you what we find is obvious, that if you are agreeable in a liberal zip code, you tend to be agreeable. If you're liberal if you're agreeable in a conservative zip code, you tend to be conservative. So you're fitting your personality into the average of the zip code. Now, this is true across, as you said 8,000 zip codes around the United States. And it's agreeableness and conscientiousness, all of the so-called big five of personality, all correlate with the correlation of agreeableness across, of conservatism across the United States. So it's a function of the personality traits as well as the conservatism of the area you live in, the zip code you live in this case.
So basically, and this would seem to make sense, if you're more of a contrarian or you're not so focused on being agreeable or conscientious, you might go against the ideology, the prevailing ideology in your zip code.
Right, that's another way of looking at it. We like to think of it as it's fitting in. You're trying to get along, you try to fit in. To get along, you get ahead. To get along and to get ahead, you need to fit in, is basically the finding.
Does that mean, our ideological beliefs are motivated by social, social pressure like that and where you live?
That's a very good question. I'm not really able to answer it. That it's possible you move to an area. I mean, we don't have the data on this, but it's possible you're moving to an area where you fit in. It's also possible you change your attitudes to be the attitudes of the people you're around. And we don't have information on either of that because we don't have longitudinal data. We just have cross-sectional data. So we just know what's the relationship where you live right now with your political attitudes. And those are the ones that fit in.
And is there a connection between personality type and political ideology? Say if you're a more conscientious person, you're more liberal or you're more conservative, or is that just based on, again, the prevailing ideology of where you live?
I smile because the word personality type is a word I try to avoid using. The personality dimensions I prefer. Sure. People are high and low at all of these dimensions. And the more sociable you are, the more liberal you are in a liberal zip code, the more agreeable you are the more agreeable you are. If you live in a conservative zip code, you tend to be more conservative. So you're fitting in to the environment. And whether you chose that environment or not, we just don't have the data on that.
Interesting. Well, how can these results impact our understanding of the deep political divide in the country?
In some sense, they're very pessimistic because it says that you might, and this is implication from the data, and we don't have these data particularly ourselves, that it might well be that if you're fitting in this way, you're not going to like people with the opposite attitudes, and you might, in fact, move into areas where you fit in. And that's going to lead to a polarization of attitudes. And we're not, and this is the fear we have, in fact, is that these findings suggest that you might polarize your attitudes because you're trying to fit into the zip code or to the region where you're living. And that that doesn't speak well for our future, particularly.
Well, there's a lot of foreboding data out there about our ability to get along politically in the future. But Professor Revel, a very fascinating study out of Northwestern. Thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.